Infrastructural Work Group.
Sorry about that, Lance. Please.
No problem. And just wanted to make sure to give as many folks as we could some understanding about the different parts and pieces of that legislation. So it really starts with, so there's 4 different parts to this bill, including the Wastewater Infrastructure Work Group, but it really starts with establishing a policy for the Commonwealth. And so the policy that's established, and it's now codified under 62.1, so it's under DEQ's code section, is for the Commonwealth to prioritize universal access to wastewater treatment that protects public health and the environment and supports local economic growth and stability. So that's a pretty big step. I feel like there was similar legislation dealing with water as a human right, and so I think it was a major step for the General Assembly to recognize that there's a very important things for all Virginians. To meet that goal, the bill lays out a couple of things that VDH and DEQ and our partners are to be working on. That deals with improving public education regarding adequate treatment. So, some examples of ways we could try and improve public education. We've had some discussion. The Realtors Association talked about. They have a weekly podcast. Maybe we could put some information out through that to improve education to their users. And we have a Septic Smart Week, which is every September that we try and do outreach to the public on. So looking for ways to improve education and outreach, looking for ways to collaborate and coordinate more with grants. So we have a list of available grants that are out there for wastewater infrastructure, looking for ways to increase funding for those grants, looking for ways to seek new grant opportunities. So the Department of Health, we got a grant from the Virginia Environmental Endowment a couple of years ago. This is a picture of one of the systems that's gotten installed under that grant. So we're always looking for new opportunities there. And really excited, was telling Eldon before the meeting started, the ARPA funding that was just approved through the General Assembly sets aside $5.75 million this year and $5.75 million next year for septic and well repairs for households at or below 200% of federal poverty guidelines. So that gives us a really great opportunity to do a lot of projects and a lot of good throughout the Commonwealth. And we'll certainly share more on that as we get that program put together. Other parts of this Commonwealth policy, things that the bill directs us to do, directs us to prioritize and focus on innovative use of funding. So he's trying to find ways that we can combine infrastructure funding with maybe housing improvement funding, so that we get those co-benefits, maybe economic development benefits. We're looking at data from local health departments, trying to identify shovel-ready projects, so we can help prioritize those. So looking at different ways to do that. I think this is a really important one, putting a preference for community-based and regional-based projects as opposed to site-by-site solutions. Y'all have a really great example of that in the Rappahannock River Basin with Catlett Calverton, where rather than trying to do one repair here and one repair there, you're tackling a whole community. And I think that's something we certainly want to try and do more of. That's not to say that's going to be the best case for everything. If you're in the middle of a 10-acre parcel of land and your nearest neighbor didn't have any problems, fixing your drain field individually might be the best solution. But where we can get community-based solutions, that will definitely be a focus. And integrating solutions across sewer and on-site. So, our program deals with on-site sewage, but stepping back and thinking, is this something better that we could be coordinating with DEQ about for a solution, as opposed to trying to handle it ourselves at VDH with one site. So those are some parts of that Commonwealth policy. And you'll certainly hopefully hear more about that in the near future. And I would strongly encourage you to participate in wastewater infrastructure work group meetings, because that's where we're going to have a lot of the discussions about those different components of the Commonwealth policy. So the wastewater infrastructure work group, we had an informal, well, not informal, we had a work group put together through agreement from several secretariats, but the House or Senate Bill 1396 codified that work group. So it includes our director or commissioner for health, Dr. Oliver, David Peller, director of DEQ, VRA, and also DHCD. Jay Grant is the representative for DHCD. And then we're inviting a number of different stakeholders from our end. We're inviting Valra, who's kind of our primary industry work group, but certainly encourage folks to participate in that work group meetings. It continues the work group until 2030. And as part of this, you see this map down here. The initial work that work group did before it was codified, we worked with VIMS, VDH worked with VIMS to develop this wastewater data viewer that shows these hotspots. So if you see these really red boxes here, those are areas where we're having frequent septic repairs. And then they have some different colors. There's emerging hotspots. There's decreasing hotspots. You know, there's different variations here. We also have sea level rise impact data. We have our data from our shellfish harvesting seawater sampling. So a lot of different data sets we're putting together here to try and help us get a better picture of where to spend the funds that become available. And what we were able to do as a result of this legislation is got some additional funding, because currently this map is just primarily, or is just localities east of 95. And the funding is going to allow this mapping to be done for the rest of the state. So that's a really great project, and I think will help us a lot in identifying infrastructure needs throughout the Rappahannock River Basin, not just the lower portions. This work group is actually going to have some regional meetings in September. So there's a Eastern region meeting that will be held at VIMS on September the 8th, I believe. I'll send Eldon the dates so you can share this with your members. And it's just a listening session, just trying to get feedback on things we can be working on as a work group. There will be a virtual component. We're actually going to be encouraging folks, given the Delta variant, to participate virtually. But we'll have that meeting. Then the following week on the 15th, I believe, we have a meeting at the Perimeter Center in Henrico. That's kind of the central area. And then we'll have another meeting in Roanoke on the 22nd. And just to kind of have these regional listening sessions on the work that this infrastructure work group should be focusing on. So I'll definitely send those dates out, and so y'all can participate in those, and we'll certainly share the virtual meeting information as soon as that becomes available. A fourth part to this third part to this legislation that's I think also very critical, especially for the lower part of the Rappahannock River Basin, is looking at the impacts of climate change. So what we have here is a picture of a system that was designed in 2002. It met our 70-foot separation distance to shellfish waters. Design fully complied with the regulations, so they got a permit, they installed it. And if you see this kind of circled area here, that's a distribution box. that is an arrow pointing to where that distribution box was in 2019. Sea level rise had eaten away a considerable amount of shore. These property owners had to relocate their drain fields off these remote easements at some considerable expense. And so what the bill does is gives the Department of Health the authority to incorporate considerations for the impacts of climate change in our sewage handling regulations. We are starting a process to revise those regulations right now. We actually have a sewage handling disposal advisory committee meeting here this morning. I'm going to start breaking up into probably some ad hoc work groups, and would definitely encourage folks that are interested in this issue to participate in that and help give us feedback on how best to consider those impacts when we're doing designs for on-site systems. Then the final part of the legislation is dealing with our Indemnification Fund. So if you're familiar with that, when an owner applies for a septic permit, $10 of that permit goes into an indemnification fund. And the intent of that was that if the health department was at error and your system failed prematurely within 3 years, it was the fault of the department, we would pay up to $30,000 to repair your system. But we've did a lot of work improving quality assurance of our staff, and additionally had a lot of work that's been transitioned to the private sector. So we get very few of those fund requests these days. And so what we ask to be able to do is use those funds for grants and loans for low-income households to help with septic repairs. We'll be hiring a wastewater infrastructure manager that's going to manage this grant and loan program. They'll also be managing the ARPA funding that we receive. They'll be kind of our liaison to the wastewater infrastructure work group. So that person's going to have a lot on their plate. If you have folks that you think might be interested in that, I'll share that posting as soon as it goes out. I'm hopeful it'll be out here very, very shortly. That's kind of a really quick overview of the bill and things that we're working on. And happy to answer any questions that you have about any of those different components.
Lance, we had a question in the chat from Harrison. How can you get on email list to join or follow these work groups?
So with the SHADE Act, if you just send me an email at Lance, and I'll put my email in the chat menu. If you just send me an email, I will get you added on to our SHADE Act, which is our Sewage Handling Disposal Advisory Committee. And that's our primary group that we run policy, regulation changes, things like that through. But it's a very informal work group. If you come and participate in a meeting, you've got a question, you've got a thought, everybody's welcome.
And before I open it up for other questions, Lance, if you could send me those slides, I'll post them to our website underneath this meeting.
Okay.
On our tech committee page, which I've got to update for the last couple of meetings anyway. Okay. Other questions for Lance? Go ahead.
Yes. This is Deirdre Clark, John Marshall Soil and Water. I had a question for Lance. Several years ago, a few of us in the Upper Basin were working on a project for informing new homeowners of maintenance of septic systems, et cetera. And we had looked into the possibility of requiring some information at closings of rural properties that would be passed on to potential homeowners through the realtors handling the closings. Do you know if that was ever implemented? And I think it is especially significant right now. We've had a huge influx of urban people relocating to rural areas, and quite honestly, they don't have a clue. So location of the septic system and distribution box, et cetera, as well as the projected maintenance issues associated with those systems.
So we do have a requirement, but it is only for alternative systems. There was legislation, I cannot remember the year right offhand, but it does require when we issue a permit for an alternative system, we provide a recordation document to the permittee that they have to record with the deed of the property that notifies, it just provides notice that this system is served by an alternative system. Please go to the local health department to get a copy of your record. You have maintenance requirements that you're going to be having to do. And so the idea is that, at closing, that would be incorporated in the documents that people receive. Being completely honest, that hasn't been a great success, because I think a lot of people, it's just another piece of paper, amongst the stack of 1,000 others that they get when they purchase a property. So we're definitely looking at ways that we can improve that education and outreach to new owners of existing systems.
Yeah, if I could,
Okay,
Dave
thank
Evans,
you.
I'd like to just add on that, but Deirdre, if you had more, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just thanking Lance.
Okay, sure. So this is very interesting discussion to me, and I think most people know that where DEQ has prepared a TMDL implementation plan, EPA has approved it, that DEQ has funding for septic BMPs, pump outs, repairs, new installations, and so on. In the implementation plans that I've been a part of developing, I know one of the recommendations for education and outreach is to have grantees spend some of their technical assistance dollars to prepare materials that would be useful for area realtors to be able to communicate septic system maintenance to prospective purchasers. So I just wanted to point that out, that in areas where we have an approved implementation plan that has that kind of a recommendation, DEQ's Section 319 grants could support preparing materials and working with area realtors. So an example of that, I know that recommendation is written into the Upper Goose Creek. Of course, that's Potomac now that I think about it, and also Mattaponi, and that's York. But we're preparing one in Mountain Run, Muddy Run, Lower Hazel River, and that will be a part of the recommendation there. I think even in the areas where we don't have that, education and outreach generally is in there, and it certainly would be something DEQ would be interested in. So just wanted to mention that DEQ, where we have 319 grants, could support some of that kind of work with realtors.
Brent, if you want to come off mute and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering regarding the indemnification funds, the grants and loans, if there will be a process to determine whether a system needs to be relocated, replaced, or repaired. Just thinking in situations where many properties are being inundated with recurrent flooding, and some properties are actually not going to have viable alternatives to place their systems, and what some of the solutions will be for planning for those situations. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we would still follow our standard permitting procedures. So in order to, I envision this would run very similar to our previous grants that we've run, where in order to receive funding, first you get qualified. Once you're qualified, then you get a permit. So you'll have to get a designer to come up with a regulatory compliant design. And then once we have that and we have that permitted, we could provide a grant or a loan for that replacement. And I think it's a great question. It gets to that, looking at the bigger picture of the community of, if they don't have a really good solution on their property, you're talking about easements onto other properties, then it's, okay, well, is anybody else in this area having an issue? Maybe there's something we could do kind of bigger bang for our buck to help more than that, just that one individual owner. So That's certainly going to be a part of it for us, is looking at trying to step back where we can and think about bigger picture solutions. But at the same time, trying to make sure we're helping the individuals.
Brian, you had a question that you put in the, or a comment, if you will, in the chat. You want to come off mute?
I was just commenting on something Deirdre was mentioning about how you do have all these people moving from the city where they have wastewater infrastructure and they don't know what to do and not to do with their septic systems and other things that come with rural life lifestyle. And just the how-to guide, I know, has been brought up for several years, if not longer than my tenure here in the region, as just something PDCs, real estate agents, communities, local governments can give out as a thank you for moving out to our beautiful countryside. Make sure you don't screw up your septic system and or other utilities that we all rely on out here. But if there is that guide or resource, maybe we could adopt it locally and find a way to strategically distribute it. If there's not, maybe we should keep our collective eyes and ears open for some grant dollars that could be branded by the collective PDCs of the Rappahannock or the River Basin Commission or something along those lines.
I'm looking at John McCarthy because in his previous lifetime he created such a document, a little flyer for new residents of Rappahannock County, right?
It was, basically along that same line that both Brent and others have mentioned. It was an attempt to sort of tell people, as Brian would put it, don't screw up what you don't understand. And it included everything from how to manage your driveway to how to manage your septic system. I don't know that Rappahannock is still distributing it. I know they were in the process of amending it to, update it to some additional information. But it basically went to everybody that did not have a Rappahannock address, who just bought property in Rappahannock County. It got sent to them as part of the real estate transfer process. It generated a lot of questions and calls to local government, like, well, what's a septic system? And you'd be surprised how many people do move to a place and have no idea about some of those details.
Right. I was looking through my archive in my computer because I thought I had a copy of it, but I couldn't put my hands on it.
I'll try to find it and send it to this group, or send it to you, and you can pass it out to who's interested.
Sure.
And I did.
Eldon? Oh.
Just to follow up on that, I did post a link in the chat. The second one's probably a better one. We have a YouTube video on that page. It's kind of what to know when we work with Virginia Tech on like what to know when buying a house with well and septic. And then there's some other information on there that certainly feel free to plagiarize that all you want.
Michelle.
Yeah, this is Michelle Edwards with RRC, and I know Fauquier County was distributing our homeowners guide to watershed friendly backyard that had a septic chapter, and we got the information from the septic chapter from VDH. So if there is any more updated information that VDH has, and I'll take a look at whatever Lance says, we'll put it in there, but we've been trying to make that as widely available as possible. It's not, there's a lot of information in there beyond just septic though, so.
Thank you, Michelle. And I know that Culpeper Soil and Water has done some brochures and
yes, they have.
Yeah.
We link to that. That's one of the resources we link to, and we have that on our website, and I've been telling people to use it, the online version, because it includes links to all of those resources. But I know Fauquier has also been printing it out and handing it out as well.
All right. Any final questions for Lance? Because he's got to run off to his other his septic working group, other septic working group meeting.
Hey, Eldon, just a comment. Lance, have you looked at BRIC grants so far, like building resilient infrastructure and communities? Those are kind of things that would have a nice natural dovetail into what you're doing. And those are FEMA grants that might be available to you.
I have not, you said brick grants?
Rick, they're new for this year, and they're called, it's Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities. If you just look that up, we can help you kind of navigate through that if it's something that is relevant to you. And if I can, Eldon, just real quick, because I got to jump off too. We're in the middle of repatriation for everybody coming in from Afghanistan, and it's quite the mess.
Okay.
So I'm supposed to brief you a little bit on the Rappahannock River Basin project that's been kind of off and on with VDEM and a number of other entities. As you might have known, there is a group called CIT out there that's the Center for Innovative Technology, and they have been one of the primary catalysts for getting this pilot project in, which includes, and bear with me, that includes sensors that are being paid for by the Department of Homeland Security as a test bed for smaller businesses. They've gone through a couple iterations with this. The first company did not fare well. They are now in the second phase of, or the second vendor, if you will, in a group called IntelliSense. Because of both VDEM's inattention because of COVID last year and a number of other factors, CIT has partnered with a number of individual localities, and we do actually have sensors in the water now. I believe a total of 12, and they run from Roanoke, Fairfax, and a number of other places, and feed into something called VA Fix, which is again, bear with me, is a drone website that has a number of different inputs in it for different data inputs to help pilots as they navigate throughout the Commonwealth. That was at that point was their only way or only method to be able to input this data, and everybody can access this if you ask for a VA Fix account. Our point right now, and now that we've got, and many of you know, the other side of this is iFlows. iFlows is a kind of dying system within the Commonwealth, and one which we've received a fair amount of money from the General Assembly to be able to upgrade. So what we're trying to do, Pete and I, at the moment, is marry those two, both the RRBC project and iFlows writ large, and come up with one type of one-stop shopping for every flood sensor that's within the Commonwealth of Virginia, and even further on down a standard common operating picture for all hazards, whether it be water quality, whether it be turbidity, whether it be air quality, air sampling, that kind of thing. So it's short-term and long-term in that regard, but we're making pretty good progress with CIT on how to make that work. I apologize, I don't have the fancy slides that were previously shown. Our plan is to have a very, very concise and very hopefully expansive at that point informational brief to the whole group in September, but I'll be glad to take any questions.
Okay, and so you guys are involved in all the work that's going on at Fort Lee, I guess it is?
No, sir, that's the SIV program. So that's special immigrant visas. That's the ones that are dealing with those are primarily the drivers or the people that worked for the State Department that they're trying to get in. The ones that we're trying to get at now are the State Department people, or the families, or the American citizens that are still stuck in Afghanistan. And we set up something called a emergency reception center there at Dulles. And every plane that comes in, we provide. It's a lot of stuff.
Okay, well, we don't want to keep you any longer than we need to. If anybody got critical questions, there will be a presentation at the September 22nd commission meeting. And That will be an in-person meeting, and we will not have a virtual option because we just can't, we don't have the bandwidth to do that at Grace Mountain Lodge. But any questions for Ed or Peter before they have to make a strategic withdrawal? Okay, everybody's letting you guys off the hook. Go do good work, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, sir.
Okay,
We'll see you in September.
okay. Thanks,
Thank
Ed.
you, guys.
Thank you. All right. With that, you're up early, Brian. Let's talk about September 8th. That we now know is going to conflict with the Eastern Area meeting at VIMS, the listening session.
Well, I'm sure it was inevitable that it was going to conflict with something. Feel really blessed that we got so many folks scheduling through the advisory group to find dates that we did. So yes, so the Rappahannock River Roundtable was awarded a grant through the Virginia Department of Forestry and some line items in some other contracts with National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, Department of Environmental Quality, to reinstitute an old kind of state of the Rappahannock style workshop. And this is called the Rappahannock River Symposium. It's being hosted September 8th in person and virtual in Fredericksburg, Virginia, at a newly redeveloped infill development called the Woolen Mill right on Princess Anne Street. A 3-story building with outdoor courtyard and rooftop river views. And I'm just gonna share my screen here if that's possible. We engaged the Roundtable Advisory Group, which has about 15 members, to help develop the scope of that effort. Anything from the format, topics that they'd like to see discussed, potential presenters, and helping to wrangle all those people. And I'll just start with the registration is live. We've solicited Greenfin Studio to help manage the registration as well as run the day of logistics and the virtual portion of the offering. Roundtable partners, and that's everyone that I've met or talked to, shook your hand, gave a high five, or liked your Facebook post. Use the code Rappahannock, all caps, and you get a free ticket. This is designed for partners, local government staff, PDCs, soil and water districts, technical service providers, etc. If you have a stake in conservation of some form in the Rappahannock watershed, there is something here for you, or someone here you could meet as a networking opportunity. But it is not closed. It's open to master naturalists, tree stewards, other interested folks who aren't officially affiliated with an organization. And that's what the small fee there is for. The Zoom option is free. The fee is really to help recover the cost of lunch. And there is a in-person networking happy hour featuring some local beers and wine afterwards for folks who are interested. Now, let me see here. This is the agenda in draft form, and I reserve the right to change it. As people say, I've got another meeting in the morning, please put me in the afternoon, or I'm sending my subordinate to give that presentation in my place. Very fortunate to have Secretary Bettina Ring giving some opening remarks, followed by the state of the WIP implementation given in part by Terry Lasher, the Assistant State Forester, and then also James Martin with the Department of Environmental Quality. So many of us are working on Chesapeake Bay milestones, local TMDL or MS4 milestones, all kind of summed up in the larger watershed implementation plan which has those numerical values and targets, but also those narrative goals that do involve more things like land conservation, habitat, and program updates. So once a year at the Virginia Conservation Network's Water Work Group, we get a really in-depth overview, normally delivered by Ann Jennings, about where we're at with the WIP. This will give the opportunity for looking at the forestry type BMPs, as well as the green infrastructure, stormwater, and ag BMPs there, direct from the administration. Moving in, and those will all be kind of one session. We wanted to then have 3 concurrent sessions to offer the widest range of opportunity for folks. And we can share this, and it'll be made public here soon. I will feature just a couple that I'm really excited about. We have an ecosystem-based management approach for the lower Rappahannock River fisheries put on by Chris Moore with Chesapeake Bay Foundation. A lot of work has been taking place at the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission to come up with a new strategy for managing menhaden, striped bass, and other interstate fisheries. And we're really excited about what this might entail for one of our largest keystone fish species in the lower Rappahannock. And then this one here, thanks in large part to some of the PDCs and the River Basin Commission for helping make this happen. We have planning directors from Culpeper County and Caroline County coming together for a panel discussion led by Denise Nelson to talk about how their counties came about to develop their utility scale solar policies and ordinances. They're both great examples, I think, of a positive way of doing that, and a lot of good feedback from the roundtable advisory group members on that. I think that's going to be really popular, and we might get some really great discussion going there that folks might take away back to their localities as they are developing their own regulations. Some other really cool stuff that's focused here in the Rappahannock. We have a whole farm approach being piloted at the Three Rivers Soil and Water Conservation District, which may end up being available to other districts and regions. Really excited about that. We have the Rappahannock tribe giving a presentation, potentially U.S. Geological Society giving a really big time research update on long-term trends analysis of the lower Rappahannock, and some great other stuff. We are closely monitoring the situation with the new developments of Delta and COVID. From the very get-go, we realized this was not going to be an all in-person, take it or leave it, you can't come, so what? And we did build in the Zoom. We're going to have moderators at each in each session that are taking and posing questions from the chat to the presenter, and we'll have a follow-up analysis and report from Greenfin Studio that it enables us to take unanswered questions from the virtual participants and get them addressed and have a Q&A posted, follow-up, or just individual questions answered to make it as inclusive and engaging for the virtual participants as we can. Obviously, one of the big benefits that we were told as to why we wanted this in person was that water cooler discussion. You know, how many people have bumped into Eldon at the General Assembly and gotten 5 minutes of high quality conversation that you wouldn't have gotten? Well, maybe high quality conversations a bit much to expect there, but you know what I'm saying. And we want to make sure that there's plenty of time to have those casual conversations, to catch up, to bring up that big idea you had 3 years ago before COVID and everything else happened. And we very well may have the state say that we can't do in-person indoor meetings. One of the sessions is completely outdoors underneath a tent in a courtyard. So folks that wanted to come and participate would still have an option for outdoor social distance. And there are some excellent sessions being hosted in that tent. We had explored a 100% outdoor option, but fall, spring soccer leagues took that and said, no, you can't have your big circus tents there overnight. anyway, we're really excited about this and hoping that it's able to move forward in a safe fashion that's informative, beneficial for all. And at the very least, we have identified high quality presentations and presenters for the most part. You'll notice my name's not on there, so we set a bar to keep this efficacious there. And if we have to go virtual, we can pre-record those presentations, or we have the ability already in play to go all virtual if needed. And this could easily be a every other year, potentially when the 305B integrated water quality assessment report comes out, new report cards come out, anything like that. And we're definitely going to want feedback and recommendations from members of this body and others on how to improve it in the future.
Brian, are you, since you've got virtual option, I assume you'll have recordings of every one of the sessions and you'll post them somewhere?
Yeah, when you register for the virtual ticket or RSVP, follow-up email will give you access to a website that's going to have links to each individual sessions. So you're not just doing one long stream. You can pick and choose which ones you want, and your calendar can have an update reminder for each individual session. So if you only see 2 you want to go to. And additionally, that portal that you gain access to will have each one of those presentations recorded and spliced up individually, hosted there. We are asking that you register to gain access to those resources, share them with your colleagues at your organization. But if somebody wants access to all of those, tell them to register so that they can get on the listserv and have those updates, and the ability to reach out to those presenters afterwards.
Well, one of the advantages, if you see, I saw a couple sessions that are on the same time. And what that does is that affords you the opportunity to watch one live, but then watch the other recorded later. And that's a nice benefit. And Brian, I'd love to talk to you offline about some of the mechanics of this, because we do that in some other settings here. And it's been a fascinating learning experience about doing stuff that we never thought a year ago or 2 years ago we'd ever be doing. And how to manage stuff like this, because I think I'll just opine for a second. We need to hone our capabilities to do this hybrid type of meeting, because we just don't know how many times we're going to be in and out of this stuff as we go forward. And as much as we all want to get back to in-person meetings, some of that's not going to be under our control. Anyway, other questions for Brian? Let's see, I think we answered questions that have been put. It looks like, Harrison, we got your question answered. This is a great opportunity. I think the last time we did what we used to call them is Basin-wide Summit, and I think it was 2015 was the last one. It's not something we try to do, on a too regular basis, because you just don't need to do it every year. But I like your every other year idea. So any questions on the topic areas, the speakers? You got, you're getting kickoff by the secretary is wonderful. Thanks to the folks that helped secure that. Other questions, comments? For those of you who didn't catch on to it, Dave Evans and David Nunley both joined us as we were in Lance's presentation. David comes in 2 portals, one where he can see us and the other where he can talk to us. So he has his own Caroline County broadband experience. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions, Brian. We had intended that we were going to dedicate a good chunk of this meeting to talking about the river gauges, and I guess we're just I guess VDM is just forever in emergency management mode. And every time we think we're going to have a detailed conversation on this project, they get pulled off on something else. And, that's just the way it goes. Drew Williams, I want to get you to come off mute for a second. You're a newcomer to this group. Drew is one of the principals with the Berkeley group, and you've got a contractual relationship with George Washington Regional Commission as well as Middle Peninsula. And the Berkeley group fills that role. You want to talk to us just a little bit? There's some changes going on at the Berkeley group, and some people are used to seeing certain faces, and things are moving around.
Yeah, thanks, Eldon. Thank you, Eldon. Yeah, my name is Drew Williams. I'm the CEO and one of the owners of the Berkeley Group. You're probably used to seeing Denise around the table, and unfortunately, she's no longer with the Berkeley Group. We are working on continuing to support, obviously, the GWRC and the MPPDC programs, and we're working on some staff, and I'm filling in today to listen and take notes and share that with our partners. But we'll certainly be having some other folks be at the table and to keep the process and the programs moving forward in the future. So that's about all I can share right now, but we're certainly committed to this group's success, and we're kind of acting as staff to both PDCs, and we'll be continuing in that capacity.
Okay. Thank you, Drew. Appreciate that. Anything else for the good of the order, folks? I know our planned meeting got a little disrupted here, but
Yeah. Are you continuing to host the Plant Central Rappahannock Natives campaign meeting on Tuesday of next week?
Yes, that is still going to be hosted by us. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Working with Kate on that.
Yeah, I'd love to touch base with you and introduce you to our two river stewards that worked fairly intimately with Denise and Kate on a wide range of both contracts as well as just other initiatives. So that'd be great.
Sure. I'll put my contact information here in the chat so you all can have that. And, feel free to shoot me an email or a text or a phone call.
Okay. Folks, I'm gonna just jump back before I end this and say it's pretty exciting after all these years that $11 million into septic and well repair and replacement for low moderate income Virginians. Some of us have been pushing for that kind of thing to happen for as long as I've been involved in the Rappahannock River Basin Commission, which is mid-90s, folks. And a couple times we got close, John, with the General Assembly actually getting some general fund monies, but it never got to be more than a trickle. And Lance and I were talking before this meeting, and he said that's enough money that they can, over the next several years, repair many hundreds of systems. And we can start worrying about what we do after that money's gone. But golly Moses, what a nice nice movement forward. And I know it means a lot to folks on this call from each of the PDCs and soil and water districts.
Now the trick is going to be finding the right way to get outreach to the folks that aren't participating in these programs. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. That was going to be one of my questions for Lance is how are people going to access this? But they're bringing on a manager, and I saw that in his slide, and that's important because somebody's going to have to ramrod this thing.
Yep.
How do you get the word out to people, especially people that don't even understand what a septic system?
Yep.
Yeah. You mean this doesn't go to a county somewhere?
It's all pipes.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. If folks don't have anything else, I will end this. We will be back together September 8th in one manner or form, either in Fredericksburg or virtually. And then September 22nd, my fingers are crossed. We were supposed to do this September last year at Graves Mountain Lodge, and that blew up literally the day before the meeting. And so we'll hope we can make this go this time. We've got a great agenda. We're going to be hearing from the folks in Shenandoah National Park about their some of their stream and fisheries work, and as well as some other local goings on in that area. Dave Evans been talking about the projects in the Mountain Run and Muddy Run and Lower Hazel, and so some real good progress updates. So with that, one last call for questions or comments. Okay, thank you, everybody. Good to see everyone.
Yeah.
And
Thank
Stay
you,
safe.
Eldon.
Thanks,
Yep.
Al.
stay safe, everyone.
You do the
Thank you.
same.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Eldon.